for joining us tonight. This is our rescheduled meeting of our normal Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting, originally for our snow day earlier in the month, and it was originally for Monday, February 1st, rescheduled to tonight, February 9th at 6:30 p.m. So thank you all for being flexible. Larry, I see you joining there as well. Thank you. So I'm Rob Klee. I'm the chair of our Town Plan and Zoning Commission. With us here tonight, we have Andrew Skolnick, Yoni Zamir, Larry Greenberg, and Jeff Kennedy and Paul Schatz on the phone. I think that's everyone. Thank you. So thank you, Chris Sullivan, for all your help, and Pula for all your help tonight with all the logistics. We're operating remotely, as you know, because of the governor's executive orders to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So thank you to all the virtual attendees and for your patience with the technology as well. So we have a full agenda. We've adjusted the agenda. Hopefully everyone got the amended order to allow our Orchard Road proceeding to start no earlier than 8 o'clock. So they're in essence pushed to later. If we do get through our normal business before 8 o'clock, we can all just sort of pause, keep it open, and go and recess and stretch our legs or get something to eat. But tonight we have some business to attend to, including continuing the public hearing at the applicant's request for the New England Brewery. And we're going to have a public hearing on the application from attorney Pellegrino regarding a special exception for a retail liquor establishment. Chris, we have in front of us a site plan application for the Regional Water Authority, a special exception request for vehicle service and repair operation. Those are the items on this sort of first half, correct, Chris?
Correct.
I didn't miss anything. Thank you. Then we'll do a work session on that group of things. And then, as I said earlier, at 8 p.m., we will continue that to Orchard Road public hearing. And I believe the agenda for that will be a presentation by Attorney Hurst. Okay, so that's a lot. I guess the first order of business is to continue item number 1, which is New England Brewing Company. Chris, that's correct. They've requested a continuation.
That is correct. They are still working on site drainage plans. So hopefully that will be here for our regular meeting in March.
Great. Okay, so do I have a motion to continue that hearing on the New England Brewing Company's application?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It moved in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of continuing item number 1, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, item 1 continued. So next up, we have Attorney Bernard Pellegrino's application for a special exception to permit a retail liquor establishment, a package store on 245 Amity Road. And this one is our public hearing. So Chris, I can open that public hearing now, correct?
Yes, and Attorney Pellegrino is with us.
Great. Thank you, Attorney Pellegrino. I think, and apologies, the winter sort of brain, have we now been doing public comment first or a presentation from the applicant first?
Presentation from the applicant.
Thank you. So Attorney Pellegrino, if you'd like to do a presentation, and then we will have public comment, and then we'll have the questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Attorney Pellegrino is yours, and everyone else, if you don't mind going on mute.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Bernard Pellegrino. I'm an attorney with the Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven, and I represent the applicant Wine and Spirits of Woodbridge, LLC. As you may recall, we were before you in December requesting a text amendment to the regulations to modify your distance requirements vis-a-vis residential homes and liquor stores, which you did approve. So we return tonight for a special exception, which is required by section 3.3 H1.4 of the regulations, to operate a retail package store at the property located at 245 Amity Road. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the site. It's a multi-tenant commercial development. It contains various tenants, including the Solon restaurant, which also has a bar and liquor license, and other tenants. I think in the application, included a picture of the pylon sign, which shows, at least at that time, the tenant space. It's about a 2.45 acre site, and it's been in existence for many years, as you know. We would locate the retail package store in a space on the building, almost the far eastern end. There would be 2 units past our unit, but it's on the eastern edge of the site. It's 1,344 square foot space. I would call that a modest space for a retail liquor store. And I included, I think, a highlighted floor plan layout so you had an idea where we were located. The proposal is in accordance with all the requirements of section 3.3 H as recently amended. I would suggest that the proposal and the site meets your special exception criteria contained in section 1.4 of that, in subsection 1.4 of those regs. It's suitably developed for retail use. There are obviously other retail uses in the site. It's well appointed. Site lighting, landscaping, ample parking, all of those things in a mature site like this. It's a well-maintained site, and it has been I think, a successful site. Their occupancy rate there is very good. So, and it's readily accessible right between routes 69 and 63. The introduction of this store to that site would not have any adverse impact on the site or the neighboring environs. I think it would be appropriate. I think it meets the criteria, and we would respectfully request that you grant the special exception. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Pellegrino. Before we go to the questions from our Plan and Zoning Commission, I'd like to invite the public who wishes to speak to use our WebEx raise your hand function, and that will alert you to Chris and team to unmute you. You'll then have 3 minutes to present your public comments. So I am opening that up now to any member of the public who wishes to speak regarding this application.
I'm not seeing any hands raised, Rob.
Yeah, but I'll give folks another minute just in case. I'm not seeing any hands raised either, although, Chris, did we receive any written comments?
I believe at your last meeting that we did. So bear with me a second.
Well, while Chris is looking for that, I will open it up to members of our Plan and Zoning Commission if they have questions of the applicant. Actually, Chris, while you're looking for that, it looks like we do have one hand raised amongst the attendees.
This is James Hubbard, and he is unmuted.
Hello, I am a resident on Morris Road, and I just wanted to speak briefly and basically welcome the idea of bringing new business into the town. I think that it's important to help to expand our commercial tax base. It's beneficial to our town. I don't feel that there's any reason to be opposed to a responsibly run liquor store, and I think that it would be an asset to the community to have it in this particular location. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. I'll now open it back up to our commission members and members of the public. As you, if you find that raise your hand button, we can always find you. I'm seeing no questions from commission members.
I do have a question. Just pardon my ignorance, because I know we've heard Attorney Pellegrino before on his application. And I know that we have heard in a previous hearing from a member of the public. I just want to be 100% clear. This is the 245 Amity Road complex in which you've got things like saloon, et cetera, and there is some vacant business space, retail space open. That's what's being proposed here. I just want to be 100% clear.
Yes, sir, that is the site. I think there are 2 spaces available, and this one was the best size for our client. So, yes, that is the site.
Thank you. Understood.
That's actually a very good point, because this is honestly Bradley Road, correct? So the address is 245 Amity Road. It's a little confusing, I think, as to its location. I know exactly where it is, but it's funny that it's called Amity Road.
Yeah, it is on the corner of Amity and Bradley, and there's the driveway, I think, actually accesses off of Bradley.
Right.
Hey, any additional questions from members of the commission?
So, Rob, the comment that we had was an aside for one of the comments that was regarding multifamily and affordable housing, and it was in support of the proposed retail liquor store.
Is that the comment from James Urbano?
No.
Because I think there was also in the packet that you, in the packet that you gave us a comment that was largely about the New England Brewery, but then had
There's a brief comment at the end, yes.
a brief positive comment on the wine shop application. Okay. Anything else for this public hearing portion of this application?
No, I'm all set.
All right. And members of the commission, you all set?
Good.
Great. So Chris, do we, and I see nothing else from the public, do we just, do we need a motion to close the public hearing?
We move to close the public hearing, yes.
All right, so I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing on our application from Attorney Pellegrino for a special exception for the retail liquor establishment at 245 Amity Road.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you, Attorney Pellegrino. We will put this into our work session, which will follow shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris,
Next up is the Regional Water Authority.
great. And so this was a very large package that came into our,
Wasn't as many sheets as you could have gotten. And we do have Emily Tooley here and Chris Bone to discuss.
great. And this one is just a site plan application, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So Chris, are you going to do the presentation?
So Chris needs to unmute, and for the rest of our commission members should go on mute for the presentation from our site plan applicants. Chris, you're still on mute. So
I believe Emily Tully. Emily, are you going to lead this for us?
Yes.
great. Does Chris need to give Emily the ability to share her screen?
Okay. No, I think we can, unless you guys have any interest in seeing the plans, I think we can speak to it as is for now. So, good evening. My name is Emily Tully. I am a planner with Ty and Bond. I'm here with Chris Bone, who's a vice president in Ty and Bond. I think Orville Kelly may also be joining the call from RWA. He's a project manager. And so tonight we are here to discuss a proposed improvements project at the RWA's West River Water Treatment Plant, which is located off Litchfield Turnpike. So this is an improvements project to improve water quality and the capacity of the water treatment plant through the addition of dissolved air flotation process unit, also some electrical service upgrades and replacement of the sodium hypochlorite system. So this is coming in for a site plan review because the dissolved air flotation requires the construction of a non-residential building, and the Litchfield Turnpike parcel is located in residential zoning. The dissolved air flotation system, as probably a lot of what the review package included, was just some of the project need. You know, this is a project that's been thought about for some time by RWA. It's related to algal impacts, potential algal impacts on the filters, particularly in the summer, and decreased capacity, and so a desire to improve the ability of the water treatment facility to provide high quality water at a full capacity year round. Oh, Orville, would you like to say anything about, introduce the project now that you're on the line? Give him a minute. Feel free to jump in at any time. So the addition of the dissolved air flotation process to the treatment at the West River Water Treatment Facility will allow the facility to treat these seasonal algal blooms, improve the capacity, and also improve resiliency because it reduces the amount of backwashing. So that reduces electrical costs and also the amount of spent filter backwash water. And ultimately will improve the reliability of the water treatment plant and the ability to provide clean drinking water. So there was a pretty thorough alternatives analysis conducted, and the decision was made to add dissolved air flotation through the construction of 3 new dissolved air flotation basins in a new standalone building. There's also associated with this replacement of the sodium hypochlorite system, which is aging and high maintenance. So this would be replacement of the existing system with an on-site sodium hypochlorite generation system, and then also conducting some electrical service improvements that include replacing the outdoor generator with a larger generator that can sufficiently power both existing and the new proposed dissolved air flotation building. The new building is proposed to be a two-story building, about 3,400 square feet in size, to house the 3 new dissolved air flotation basins. There will be 2 bridges to connect to one of the existing buildings on the site, and a pole-mounted lighting fixture between the dissolved air flotation building and the filter building. There will also be drainage infrastructure and some renovations to the existing building associated with these improvements. All in all, the site disturbance associated with this project is anticipated to be about 0.38 acres. So less than would be required to develop a separate soil erosion control plan. During this project, emergency access is anticipated to be maintained throughout, and the existing driveway is proposed to be extended along with sidewalks behind the filter building to provide access both for vehicles and pedestrians on the site. There are no anticipated impacts to special features. There are some inland wetlands on the site, approximately 140 square feet of impacts to those are anticipated. That is an as-of-right activity as a public utility project. This project went before the Inland Wetlands Board a few weeks ago, and I think was approved at that time. There is also a natural diversity database area on the parcel. We sent in a request for review, and that response included recommendations that will be incorporated into the project. The location of the building complies with all of the underlying zoning of the residential district. It's located in the interior of the parcel, which is a very large parcel, 580 acres, and so it complies with all the setback requirements, and is generally anticipated to be in compliance with all of the site plan objectives. Overall, the reliability of this project, of the water treatment plant, will be increased with the installation of the dissolved air flotation and the other elements of this improvements project. Chris or Orville, do you have anything else to add?
A little bit on schedule and background. That we're in the final stages, obviously, of completing the design. And as Emily noted, there's a permitting process going on right now. There's an RWA representative policy board funding review process going on right now. The intent is to have all of that come together. RWA is anxious to have this project moving forward out to bid in April, if at all possible. That allows them to construct it over the next year, essentially, and hopefully have some beneficial use for this project later in the summer of 2022, if all goes, well, and have additional capacity and improve water quality, as soon as possible. So that, it's a important, high-profile, critical project for the RWA. Don't have anything else to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions, on project specifics or technical details.
So great, thank you all for your presentation and for the materials provided. Chris, because this is a site plan approval, this is just us. With questions or comments. So I'll open it up to our members of the Planning Zone Commission if they have any questions. So while you're thinking of your question, I'll start with, I guess, a couple of things. So this new, I think you mentioned, is a 3,400 square foot building. It's going to be situated near the existing buildings, and will there be pipes that are in essence flowing from one building to the other, this new building, to sort of in the
Yep.
sort of treatment cycle?
Yep, this will be a standalone building, similar in architecture to the existing one. It's a pretty industrial building. This will be a brick building, essentially a rectangle. It'll be largely hid from the view of the main road from, by the filtered water tanks that are in front of the plant. So you'll be able to see parts of it, but not fully. It'll be about 20 feet from the existing building as a standalone structure. There'll be pipes underground that will be going in and out of the filtration building, the existing building that's on site. There'll also be a walkway, an elevated walkway that goes from the existing building to the new building to allow access for operators, for their routine maintenance rounds, things along those lines.
So that's an enclosed bridge in essence between.
It's not an enclosed bridge. It's a grading platform. It's it's a 3-foot, 4-foot wide, elevated platform with handrail that will be exposed to the atmosphere. So there'll be no enclosure over that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I noted that, I guess I was struggling between wrestling with the very large document that was sticking out of my mailbox for nearly causing traffic issues. Do you have to clear a bit of the property to build this new building?
Yeah, Emily might have the square footage off the top of her head in the application, but there is a small amount of clearing. To the south of the building where we're building the new dissolved air flotation structure, there's an existing grassed area, and then we migrate into some trees on a relatively steep slope in that area. So there will be some limited amount of clearing in that area as we do a little bit of regrading as we build the structure.
Yeah, I'm not sure about how the numbers break out, but the total amount of earth disturbance is 0.38 acres, and that includes the clearing for the new dissolved air building, and then also some disturbance associated with new electrical conduit and demolishing the existing electrical transformer and pad, and the existing generator and pad.
Yeah. So
all together, that adds up to 0.38 acres.
In the trenching, though, between the two, you're in essence, and apologies if I didn't see it right away. When the new building is built, how far are you from the existing building?
20. Yeah. So the area between the two buildings, there's going to be two large 36-inch diameter water pipes that go to and from the new building, and then a series of other, smaller pipes. Water pipe, there's a chemical pipe, and an electrical conduit. So there'll be quite a bit of disturbance between the two areas in that existing grassed area.
Other members of the commission, do you have questions? And seeing none, though I can pause for a moment if people. I guess after us, what are your next steps?
The big milestone we've got coming up is we need to make submittals to the Connecticut Department of Public Health, including the Connecticut land use permit, and there's other approvals to construct the project. This is a state revolving fund or SRF funded project, so there's a bunch of reviews that they need to go through. So it's really going through the process over the next month and a half with that Connecticut DPH review process, and then just packaging this up and ready to bid for April. So the design is, the site plan, the building is essentially complete and ready to go to construction. It's just that packaging and permitting.
Orville, you may be on mute, or we may not be able to hear you. No. Orville, your mic may not be working.
Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we got
Oh, we
you.
are, yeah.
Thank you. I've been trying to speak all this time. sorry, Emily and Chris have been trying to say something, but just to add to the next step, I really want to just state to the board that we're presently in the midst of our RPB, Representative Board Policy hearing. There is a public hearing scheduled for next Thursday, the 18th. After which we expect a ruling, whether it be approval on March. As soon as that comes in, it's rush to just kind of get the design out the door, the bid, and go through all the different procedures. We are concurrently working also with DPH in getting the approval to move ahead. And as Chris mentioned earlier, this is really a big project for us in terms of the usage, the beneficial usage of this. You live in the area, so I don't know if when you drive by during the summer months, you see the green looking stuff on top of the water there. That's what we're trying to mitigate to make sure that we have the full usage of the treatment plant.
Thank you, Orville. Any other questions from members of the commission? I'm seeing and hearing none, so thank you all for a nice presentation and for all the documentation you provided us. Chris, do we move this over into our work session that's coming up?
Yes, you do.
Great. So we will take this up in our workshop session in just a moment. So thank you all. You're welcome to stay. Chris, anything else we have on the front end?
You've received the application from Glenn Fernandez regarding a special exception permit for vehicle sales, rental, service, and repair at 33 Lucy. It does require a public hearing, so that needs to be scheduled. They had asked, if you could get the hearing done sooner rather than later, but because of the delay in this meeting, I don't know that that's feasible or not.
Thank you, Chris. So folks, did all of our commission members receive this one? It is a letter application to now use the property. This is, Chris, refresh our recollection, this is the one that we allowed for the...
This was where you also, it was similar to Attorney Pellegrino's application, you amended your zoning regulations to allow this use. There are other uses similar to this on Lucy Street. So you did amend the regulations to allow this use, and so that's why this application is now formally coming into you.
Great, thank you, Chris, for that recap. So this one needs to be scheduled for a public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is when. I will talk soon about needing to schedule some public hearings or special hearings for the 2 Orchard Road application. And I guess the only question for commission members is if you would entertain having, kind of like we do here, a quick hearing if we are meeting in February again, which I will propose that I think we have to, for the Orchard Hill Road application, for the Orchard Road application, sorry, do we add this as a short public hearing at the start of that special meeting and open up for the commission for your thoughts and reactions?
I'm fine with that. To include it, to try to move it up.
No objection to doing that.
Okay. Larry or Ann?
Yeah, as long as Orchard Road is going to be specially scheduled, I think this could be a short add-on.
Is it for certain that Orchard Road has to be specially scheduled? My understanding was that the governor's special orders have just been extended through March 1st. There was a letter that issued from his office a couple weeks ago that actually suggested sometime in April. Does that affect the deadlines for closing this hearing, Chris? That hearing, rather.
I believe at 8 o'clock when you have Attorney Dubuque on, she has a time frame that she's probably discussed with Rob. So I think it's not just one more meeting that she's envisioning. I believe there's probably 2 at a minimum.
Yeah, and so that's probably a meeting in February for the town's consultant, Amy, at the week of February 22nd. Then we have our regular meeting on March 1st, and we might need one more meeting in March to finish off public comments, have all of our questions to those applicants, et cetera. So I think to keep us on track, and I think, Andy, you're right, that it's like April, but I worry that we'll, that we have to close it by early April. So, I know. So Chris, I think, here's the question. If we don't know exactly when if we haven't fully finalized the potential for another meeting in February on the 2 Orchard Road, can we, in essence, if we have one, invite this one to join that?
Certainly.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
You've been doing motions to schedule hearings, so you can just schedule it coincidental with the next hearing on the 2 Orchard Road if you wish.
So I'll entertain a motion to schedule this public hearing on the application of Mr. Fernandez for a special exception to occur concurrent with our next scheduled 2 Orchard Road continued public hearing, if that is in February, and if not in February, it will be at the regularly scheduled March 1st meeting. It's a long motion.
I'll second it. I don't want to repeat it.
I moved it, Chris,
Okay.
and Larry is, gracefully seconded it. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Chris, hopefully you caught all of that.
That's the beauty of things being recorded. I can play them back.
You can go to the videotape on that. Okay, so those are all the things that we were doing on the upfront, and now we move to our work session. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct.
Great. Thank you all. So our work session, I guess we should take them in order, starting with Attorney Pellegrino's application regarding 245 Amity Road. Would any members of the commission, how should we do this? Do we want to actually just go to a motion to approve the application, then we can have discussion?
I'm in favor of the exception, so I'll motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So it's been moved in second. Discussion. Any members of the commission care to add any additional comments, questions, thoughts on this application, which I also think is a nice addition to that already existing commercial establishments.
I agree, Rob. I agree.
As do I.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Attorney Pellegrino.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Next up is the site plan application for the South Central Regional Water Authority, and their addition of a new building to support their water treatment activities on that site. And Chris, just clarify our role here, since this is a site plan application. Are we doing a motion and a vote to approve their site plan application?
Yes, you do. And I will confirm that the Inland Wetlands Commission did review this and did determine that this was an as-of-right activity. So you can go ahead and act on this. The wetlands has already received it and determined that they don't have to formally issue a permit regarding it.
Great. Thank you, Chris, for that clarification and addition. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the site plan application for these upgrades to the West River treatment plant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Yoni and seconded by Andrew. Discussion. Any thoughts and reactions from our commission members?
I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve it.
Great.
Agreed.
And Commission Member Schatz, nice to have you with us video. Do you care to weigh in as you often do?
I was on. Thank you. I was on. I was in the car. No. Do you guys see my screen split?
Yes. Your head is split in half.
He does drink a lot of water. Yeah, doesn't have any
Change it.
Is that 2 votes, Paul?
Now, Paul does not get 2 votes, even though he has 2 screens. He's coming to us in stereo. Any other? Yes. No. I think this makes sense, and it's nice that it's being supported by a state revolving fund grant, and trying to improve water quality is a good thing. So we've had a motion seconded. Any further discussion on the site plan application? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, it's approved. So thank you to our applicants, Chris, Emily, and Orville. Good luck, and as you move on to your next stages of that project.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay. Anything else in our business before we move to the updates on SCROG and updates from you, Chris?
No, that's it.
Okay. So, Andrew, do you have any updates from SCROG?
No, there was no meeting last month.
That's a wonderfully brief update. Chris, anything to, now there are 2 Paul Schatzes on the actual sort of screen. He is now outnumbering us. Chris, anything from you as our zoning enforcement officer?
I just want to bring to your attention that we had another thing that we need to add to our list regarding zoning corrections. We had a variance that was going before the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding a swimming pool that would have, under the old regulations, been in the rear yard setback. But we discovered in section 5.9 of our regulations that now we only talk about side and front yard setbacks for swimming pools and do no longer have rear yard setbacks. So we'll have to add that to our growing list of things that we need to look at. It may be a very quick thing to do, but it's something that needs to get addressed.
And Chris, just so I feel covered, you're the one actually keeping the list of these things, right?
Yes, I am keeping the list.
Good. I'm glad some of it. Okay, I appreciate that. And I think we're, I do appreciate that we keep finding places that need some updating, which is a good thing. Any other items or correspondence received?
I do have one other quick question for you. We had today a call regarding the Baldwin Farm on Baldwin Road. It's going to be purchased. It has to be a farm use because the property The development rights were purchased so that it can only be a farming use. And so someone's interested in doing like a corn maze and a sunflower maze there, and then growing crops. Under our regulations, farming requires a site plan review. So I'm assuming that that means that it needs to come to the whole commission for review. I'm not too sure what a farm brings to you for a site plan, but we have it listed as S under the use. So it would be similar to what you just reviewed for the regional water authority.
And Chris, can you just flip into the table? What part of the table?
It's the use table at the beginning of section 3.
Commercial farm? Greater than...
Commercial farm, 5+ acres, page 19. So this would be in a residential A zone, and it says S, which means site plan.
I think that means they have to come in front of us with a site plan.
Making sure that, because that's an expense with the plan. Okay. Oh, thank you for confirming that.
And unless someone who was here during the drafting can remember otherwise. We are missing Kathleen, who is normally our go-to on those sorts of things. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the plot of, that's the plot of land that's immediately west of Baldwin Road at Greenway? Is that what that is?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other business or items before approval of minutes? So we have minutes in front of us from our meetings December 7th, a regular meeting December 7th, our special meeting January 4th, and regular meeting January 4th. Did we have all those in the packet?
You don't have the regular meeting of January 4th.
Okay, but we had the special meeting of January 4th, and we had the December 7th meeting.
Correct. So December 7th, you had gotten a month before when you had a marathon of minutes to review.
Do we have a motion to approve the December 7th regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
And I'll second that. Anyone have any, and I know we're down our Kathleen as well, who is our good reader for minor edits. So I will move those with the possibility of Kathleen providing typo type reviews and edits. So Andrew, are you okay moving that one, which I'll second?
Yes.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the December 7th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? So December 7th. And then we have our special meeting of January 4th, which was our continuation of the public hearing on 2 Orchard Road. And we have the minutes from there. And I just, I will move for approval of these January 4th special meeting minutes. I have a second, subject to Kathleen finding typos.
Second, condition.
Chris, so discussion. I just was curious. So going forward, we will have the notation in these minutes of the written comments.
Yes.
Okay. And then we also
That was
have,
listed in there.
yeah, no, I'm just flipping through. There's a whole bunch
There's
of pages.
pages and pages, yes.
Yeah.
But
And is this now kind of our formal record of those
yes,
folks who
and
submitted?
it itemizes, you know, exactly who we got comment from, and it memorializes it. And then we have, you know, written copies in the file from all those individuals.
Great, and it also has a list of the folks who were queued and raised their hand and spoke during the session as well.
Yes.
Great. All right. All in favor of approving these minutes subject to Kathleen finding typos, say aye.
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 Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none. So those meeting minutes are approved. Okay. So we've now come to the end of our regular business. And Chris, what is the best approach now, recognizing that folks will be joining us at 8 o'clock?
I'll leave the meeting open and you can just recess it until 8. And then we'll reconvene, you know, you can all come back at 8. And then that way the meeting is open so people can still be joining it.
Okay, but should we stay logged in or not, or
You
it
guys,
doesn't matter?
I don't know how you log back in again. That's up to you.
So I have a technical question in that regard. I'm having a technical issue with the device that I'm watching on right now, in that I can't charge it because something's stuck in the charge receptacle, and I'm at 6%. So I'm going to have to vacate this and log on to something else. And am I going to be able to log back in with the same invitation that I used
Yeah,
initially?
you should be able to, and I've got my emails open, so if there's an issue, let me know and I'll re-invite you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I'm going to leave mine open just because I am not at risk of losing power on my device. Do we record this blank space for the next 30 minutes or no? Or is that, I don't want to mess with that either, but I just,
Yeah.
you know, that.
Pua's here. Hang on a second. We can bring Pua in too. Where is Pua? Hang on a second. There she is. Hi, Pua.
Okay, I think that's great. Thank you, Pua. Okay, so motion to go into recess until 8 o'clock.
So move.
Motion.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay, we'll see you all at 8 o'clock. Enjoy dinner if you're going to grab it. O'clock, and we have come out of recess in order to continue our public hearing on the application of 2 Orchard Road and Open Communities Trust. And for tonight's agenda, I believe Attorney Herbst, representing a few folks here in Woodbridge, is on deck first, and then I believe we will have the applicants an opportunity to respond to Attorney Herbst, and that's kind of going to be our goal for this evening's activities. And we will need to schedule probably some additional hearing times, likely in the third week of February. The week of February 22nd, and then continue with our normal hearings into March to try to have the public hearing portion of this application done before April. The other thing I want to note, that we are doing our best with all our members and schedules to all be here. There are a few who can't be here today, but obviously because we're in COVID, everything's being recorded, as well as we have plenty of material that's been submitted written and in comments. So the folks who are not here tonight will, next time we gather, we'll talk about the things that they did to make sure that they are up to speed, which we will all try and will do to keep up to speed, which may be via viewing the recordings of these presentations. So thank you all. Chris or Marianne, anything else in terms of logistics before I turn it over to Attorney Herbst and his presentation? Okay. So Attorney Herbst, hopefully if you are sharing your screen, you have that ability, or just ask Chris and she will give you that ability.
Thank you, Chairman Klee and members of the commission. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you okay, and I do advise for folks who are not speaking to go on mute. Thank you.
Okay. Before we begin, Mr. Chairman, I would note that in addition to Brian Miller of the Miller Planning Group, who will be offering some expert testimony that we'd like to place on the record, my colleague, Attorney Barbara Schellenberg, I believe is also on the call. I don't know if you want to keep her in the audience or admit her as well.
If you'd like to have her admitted, Chris Sullivan can have her join the very large club.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. What I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if possible, I'd like to ask some questions of one of the applicant's experts. I intend to keep those questions very straightforward and narrowly focused. And then with your permission, I'd like to transition to our presentation and elicit some testimony from Brian Miller, who has submitted a report through our office on behalf of our clients for consideration by the commission. I would like to, if at all possible, ask some questions of Donald Poland, who provided some previous analysis and testimony concerning the planning components associated with the application.
I believe that is fine, and that is what I recall we voted on last time to allow for cross-examination. I think after your presentation and after your expert, Mr. Miller, goes, I think for belts and suspenders, our commission will allow the applicants the ability to cross-examine your expert Miller as well. So we're all going both directions.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Pollan. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I've had the chance to review your resume and also the towns that you've provided planning consulting services to. Approximately how many communities have you consulted with respect to standards contained in zoning regulations for municipalities?
Off the top of my head, dozens.
Okay. And approximately how many communities have you specifically provided guidance to concerning regulations that deal with either affordable housing and or multi-unit development housing?
Dozens.
Okay. So it would be fair to say that as a planner who has consulted dozens of municipalities here in the state of Connecticut, you do have a strong familiarity and understanding of Connecticut General Statutes 8-2 and 8-23?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen. I don't have that capacity right now, so I'm going to need somebody to allow me to do that. This is my first time with WebEx, so I ask that you indulge me.
Good luck.
Okay.
And you're down at the bottom of the...
So, Chris, I have layout in the top right corner, and then I have share on the bottom that's not allowing me to share.
Right. I have so many presenters. Me trying to move the ball down to you is difficult.
I'm sorry.
Hang on a sec. Yeah. Okay. You should have it.
Okay. Let me, one second. Let me open it up. One second. Okay. Now let me try this. Did that work? Can everybody see that? Mr. Pollan, can you see the document that I've shared?
Yes, I can.
Okay. That's Connecticut General Statutes 8-2. As you probably know, this is the statute that provides the zoning enabling legislation to allow towns like Woodbridge and other towns to effectively carry out their zoning functions. I'm just going to call your attention to this section A and some of the highlighted areas that I have identified. Referring to this language in 8-2, am I correct that when planning a community, a local zoning board can consider density of population and location of certain uses within certain zones?
Yes.
Okay. Based upon the language contained in subsection A of 8-2, am I correct that a local land use board can consider things such as public health, safety, and general welfare in developing its land use plan and zoning regulations?
Correct. I believe my report covered that.
Okay. So you're also familiar with 8-23 of the Connecticut General Statutes, which provides that municipalities, it provides the statutory framework for how municipalities consider and amend and modify their plan of conservation and development, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Just going to scroll down to that. So you're familiar with this statute as well. And just point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, I would like these to be entered into the record.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So I call your attention to subsection D of CGS 8-23, and it says, in preparing such plan, the commission or any special committee shall consider the following. 1, the community development action plan of the municipality, if any. 2, the need for affordable housing. 3, the need for protection of existing and potential public surface and ground drinking water supplies. 4, the use of cluster development and any other development patterns to the extent consistent with soil types, terrain, and infrastructure capacity within the municipality. And then it goes on to talk about the state plan of conservation and development, the regional plan, and then specific needs of the municipality. So my question for you is, when you see this statute as a planner, and you see the considerations that a local municipality shall consider when constructing its plan of conservation and development, would you acknowledge and agree that a municipality must consider all of these things together and that one is not mutually exclusive to the other?
Well, first off, asking me to answer would I acknowledge and agree is kind of contradictory. I'll acknowledge that. I'll acknowledge that, yes, the community shall consider all the following.
Okay.
As for how they consider them, you know, at the end of the day, that's going to be based on circumstances. of those communities. Some have a lesser need for affordable housing. Some have a greater need for, you know, public water supply areas. Some don't even have public water supply areas. So all of it's going to be contextualized. I think the key point is if we went back to 8-22, 8-2, because we didn't go far enough with it, is the specific references, and they're in 8-23 also, to that reference ultimately the state housing plan and the consideration for the state housing plan. And then I'll yield to the attorneys on my team because I'm not an attorney. But if you then put in the legal aspects of considerations for housing, considerations of the state constitution, fair housing, disparate impacts, and all those things, we have to recognize that it's not just simply shall consider the following. It's an assessment of the each balancing needs against one another. So that's my answer to the question.
Okay, so we will agree, though, that the commission can determine where and how certain uses will be by district, and we agree that the commission can consider factors such as public health, safety, and general welfare in determining where and how to zone and to classify certain zones within the municipality. We'll agree on that.
To a degree, if I could just footnote my agreement, in the sense that, remember with planning, it's not static. So, you know, considering things like infrastructure capacity doesn't mean that it's infrastructure just right now. It'd be very easy for every community to say our infrastructure is fixed and set, we can't expand it, and therefore we're not going to change our pattern of development. The fact is, planning is about planning for the future and planning for change, whatever that change may be. In some communities, I've taught them how to right size and contract and reduce infrastructure because they're losing population. In other communities where they actually want to grow and include more people in their community, I help them plan for expanding infrastructure. So it's not a static, things are done.
But you would acknowledge that all of these things can be considered by a commission when they determine how to appropriately zone their community, establish zoning districts, and establish different standards for those districts.
Yes, they can consider these and other things.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, Mr. Poland. Since you have consulted dozens of municipalities, is it fair to say that you have consulted municipalities on standards for site plan approval and special permit standards?
Amongst other things, yes.
Okay. As a planner, can you articulate the importance of site plan standards and special permit standards that are codified within zoning regulations?
That's a weird question. Could you ask it again? Sorry.
So I'm basically asking you your professional opinion as a planner, why it is important that zoning regulations have codified standards for site plan review and approval and special permit review and approval.
Well, so first off, they're two different things.
Correct.
Site plan is essentially an administrative review of an application to ensure compliance with the regulations. And by saying that, what I mean is it's kind of checking the boxes. Do bulk and dimensional requirements match? Does use match? Count the parking spaces, so forth and so on. Unfortunately, many communities add then a bunch of subjective language to site plan, like consistent with community character. I would say that's statutorily not allowed and goes beyond the point of site plan. Special permit is a conditional use permit. It's uses where basically you've made a determination the use, let's just say retail, is allowed within a given zone. But you've also determined that there may be certain circumstances where maybe the intensity of retail or a specific location of retail within the zone might not be suitable. So conditional uses should be used sparingly, and they should be reserved for those peculiar circumstances that elevate a concern of public health, safety, and welfare. And with those, if you set forth conditions within your zoning regulations as to what should be considered in granting that application, things like, let's say, traffic or what have you, then those are what you compare by. And you can also set forth standards related to conditions of approval. So one, they're two very different types of approvals, and they both have varying degrees of applicability in different circumstances. But both are equally important for the work that they seek to achieve.
Thank you for that answer. So, based upon what you just said, is it appropriate to assume that standards for site plan approval and special permit approval help guide a commission when assessing the location and/or intensity of a given use, and it allows the commission the ability to vet the proposal based upon objective standards that may eventually allow them to condition an approval?
To a degree, just be clear that, yes, I agree, except for site plan should be very objective. Does it comply with the regulations as stated? And the objective standard in the context of a conditional use, a special permit, becomes much more subjective when there are standards like consistent with community character. We can debate that all day long, and it's not just an easy agreement between us, between various parties as to what complies. So is it an objective standard? If it's stated clearly, yes, but there's a lot of subjectivity to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So it's fair to say, though, that special permit standards can allow you to consider things like public health, safety, traffic considerations when assessing an application.
You said special permit, just to be clear?
Yes.
Yes.
And if a site plan were to consider those things, it would need to clearly delineate those standards in the reg, and then you determine whether it complies or it doesn't comply. Again, using that objective standard.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to refer you now to the proposed regulation, which I believe is in the screen share. So just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to scroll down to it. Okay. You're obviously familiar with this, right, Mr. Poland?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you helped to develop this regulation?
No.
You did not help to develop the regulation?
No, I did not.
Okay. Are you aware of any other planner that assisted in the development of this regulation?
I'm not.
Okay. Looking at this regulation as written, and given your familiarity with this application and your analysis of the existing regulations and what's being proposed, can you estimate the percentage of the town's total land mass that this regulation would impact?
Percentage, no. Large portion, recognizing that is it the A zone we're dealing with or whatever. The low density 1.5, lot size, covers the vast majority of the town. Percentage off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay. I would call your attention to, I'm just trying to move my screen here 1 second. If you look at the first paragraph, paragraph A, and I'm going to just read this into the record and let you look at this before I ask my question. It says that the purpose of the Opportunity Housing Zoning Regulation is to remedy the town of Woodbridge's prohibitions on multifamily and affordable residential development throughout most of the town. This section amends the town's zoning regulations to allow within Woodbridge's residential districts A, B, T3 through -C, T3-D, and T3-BB, multiple unit structures on lots currently restricted to single-family residential development, comma, subject only to issuance of a zoning permit as is required for single-family structures, period. And then Ray goes on to say that it has to comply with bulk and dimensional requirements for single-family structures. When I read that, am I correct in gleaning from that these proposed applications would be as of right through the issuance of a zoning permit?
Correct.
Okay. Am I correct that the Planning and Zoning Commission for the town of Woodbridge would not have any site plan review or approval of any of these applications and would not have special permit review of any of these applications?
Correct.
Okay. So this is affecting a large percentage of the town's total land mass. We agree on that.
Yep.
We agree that it would be allowed as of right.
Yep.
We agree that the commission is totally excised from the review process entirely.
Yep.
What would be the objective standard that the town, through its permitting departments, what would be the objective or subjective standard that the town would have in this regulation to determine any impact on public health, safety, or general welfare?
That should already be determined in the crafting of the regulation. It's really the last sentence that you dismissed that's most important here. It has to comply with the bulk and dimensional requirements. That's the key foundation to zoning. So allow a multi-unit structure must comply with the bulk and area and dimensional requirements of a single-family structure. From bulk, area, massing, development, nothing has changed. There's this over-reliance in Connecticut on site plan and special permit and commissions doing everything. I was helping a community down in Louisiana outside of New Orleans, and you can go in. I was trying to figure out their permitting process. You want to build a Lowe's, a Home Depot or whatever, submit your plans in the building department, 3 to 5 days, have full zoning approval, staff level approval on a big box retail. Here in Connecticut, we have this feeling that actually commissions have to approve everything when staff is actually more qualified to review plans and issue approvals. So I don't see why that's a concern.
Well, doesn't 8-2 allow commissions that power?
It does allow them. It doesn't mean they have to exercise it. That's why most commissions have professional staff to assist them in making the decisions. Staff level reviews occur initially, and staff reports are submitted to give professional perspectives. If you have concrete standards in your regulations, whether it's the bulk and area requirements, the parking requirements, the landscaping and site design requirements, the fact is any competent staff should be able to review those plans and issue a permit. And the fact that you've made the decision that the area is adequately zoned to support those uses, whatever those uses may be, then you've already confronted the issue of, public health, safety, and welfare. That is the purpose or the link between 8-23 and the Plan of Conservation and Zoning. Plan for the proper uses in the locations in which you want them, and then permit them. And when I work doing economic development work, and when I lecture on it around the state, I always tell communities, decide what it is you want, where it is you want, and allow it by the least resistant permitting process. So I don't see an issue here.
So you would acknowledge then that under 8-2 and 8-23, it is the commission that is the formulator of public policy.
Yeah, they're the policy entity.
They are for lack of a better way of saying this, the commission would be the what, and the staff would be the how. The staff would provide the technical advice to the commission to achieve their public policy objectives.
It's not just yes, but it's not just technical advice. It's professional expertise and training. I have far more training in actually doing this than any commissioner. Nothing against the commissioner. I give them credit for volunteering, and they have a very important role to play. But when you're talking about reviewing a design of a development, you know, I have to put a lot of trust in staff, and that's not at the exclusion of commissions.
So, along those lines, I know that you're probably very well versed in Connecticut General Statutes 8-3030G.
Correct.
Okay. And that state statute, the Affordable Housing Land Use Appeals Procedure here in the state of Connecticut, provides a legal framework for how an affordable housing application is brought.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Would you agree that even under 8-30G, a local planning and zoning commission has the ability to review an application that is brought under 8-30G?
Yeah, I mean, my mind's spinning trying to think of the language within 8-30G. Yeah, I think so. I'm just, in this context, I know where you're going with this, but I'm struggling to connect the dots together as that the specific language of 8-30G.
I understand. I didn't expect you to quote it, chapter.
I mean, I give to you the idea. Yes, a planning and zoning commission has the authority. Yes, they are the policy entity and so forth. But my concern here, and it's not just with you and with this circumstance, it's just in Connecticut, we think that commissions have to approve everything. And you look at some communities and everything requires a special permit. We're just over-reliant on these commission level reviews. And especially if you work outside of the state, which I do regularly, you'll see that there's a vast United States out there that actually does the majority of work by staff level approval.
Just to back up, if I may, the reason why I'm raising the question of commission review and involvement in an 8-30G application is because you stated about 7 minutes ago that you were not involved in the drafting of this regulation. You're not aware of any other planner who was, and the regulation completely removes the Planning and Zoning Commission from any level of involvement in any application brought under this proposal. So if you, who is a very accomplished planner, I've reviewed your CV, you've done this a lot in a lot of communities, you just testified that you had no involvement putting this regulation together. You're not aware of any other person who is AICP certified of your caliber who has reviewed this regulation or helped to put it together. And we have a regulation in front of us that completely removes the Planning and Zoning Commission entirely from the process. So if you're telling me that we have to rely on staff, if a professional planner possibly did not review this, and if the commission is completely removed from the process entirely as the applicant is proposing, then who with a planning background vetted this and determined that this was an appropriate planning standard?
Well, one, I never realized that it was only planners that wrote regulations. I believe there were some very highly qualified land use attorneys, many of whom, you know, have a very good grasp on planning who actually drafted this. So yes, you know, if I were the town planner, you know, working for this commission, then I would hope that I had a say in a regulation that the commission was proposing. So let's say the commission wanted to allow this and go this route, I would hope as a planner I would say that. From an applicant's perspective, I mean, you know, John Doe, the residential homeowner, could write an amendment to the regulation and propose it before the commission. I don't see this excluding me as a planner or any AICP, nor do I see it as a direct exclusion of the commission. As I said, when you get outside of Connecticut, it's very common for commissions not to weigh in on every single application that comes before the land use agency, that they heavily rely on staff. So.
Okay, a couple more questions and then I'll be done. And I thank you for your time and your indulgence. In your experience in developing affordable housing regulations for municipalities in the state of Connecticut, developing multi-unit housing regulations in municipalities across the state of Connecticut. Can you point to a regulation in any other municipality in the state of Connecticut that mirrors this proposal?
No, but that in and of itself doesn't make it wrong or weird. I always try and convince my client communities to use the least restrictive permitting process as possible. If you follow the work that I do, I am a strong advocate of site plan over special permit. And I've spent a lot of time actually trying to push commissions to allow staff to grant more approvals than they currently do. So I personally, even though I was not involved in crafting the specific language, very much applaud this and would love to see many more communities allow more development, whether it be residential, affordable, multifamily, or even commercial via zoning permit. So I think this is a great advancement.
Okay, just so I'm clear for the record, you have never seen a regulation like this in any other town or city in the state of Connecticut?
No, not in Connecticut, but I've seen it all over the place elsewhere in the country. I guess it goes back to the land of steady habits, right?
Have you ever yourself drafted a regulation that mirrors this in any state in the country?
A regulation that mirrors this? No, I have not, but I can't say I've had the opportunity to either.
Okay, so you have seen regulations, obviously not in Connecticut, but you've seen regulations in the country that allows for this type of far-reaching conversion of single family to multi-unit as of right with no review by a planning and zoning commission or a zoning board in a municipality. You've seen this before.
Well, let me return you to my Lowe's discussion. The fact is, I don't think I've seen a single Lowe's big box retail allowed via zoning permit by any municipality in the state of Connecticut. However, I've seen it elsewhere in other states. I actually told my client I was hired to help them expedite their permitting process, and I told them they needed to stop paying me because anything quicker would be irresponsible. My point being is, if we're going to talk about permitting processes, it goes well beyond just simply a discussion of housing and affordable housing. It goes to the fact that, Connecticut is this older, staid place that's kind of stuck in its ways. And we wonder why Phoenix grows in leaps and bounds. It's because those other places actually allow things via staff level permits without everything going to commissions. So.
A couple more questions and I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. So just so I'm clear, you've never seen this. You've never seen a regulation like this in any other town or city in the state of Connecticut, and you've never seen or helped to draft a regulation like this in any other town or city in the United States?
Not specific to housing, no.
Okay.
I've many times helped communities be less restrictive with their permitting processes, including allowing things via staff level permit.
I'm going to conclude by getting back to the last sentence in paragraph A, where you and I had a conversation earlier about how this is the standard that the town of Woodbridge would follow to facilitate this regulation change and any future zoning permits that were issued by the town relative to this regulation. So my question for you is this. You take a single-family house and you maintain the dimensional requirements, the bulk requirements, the appearance of the single-family structure, but you increase the number of livable dwellings within it from 1, single family, to 4. You are going to increase the housing stock from 1 to 4. From a planning perspective, and getting back to 8-2, which talked about, and 8-23 for that matter, that a local planning and zoning commission can consider impacts on infrastructure and public health. Would you agree that increasing the number of allowable units from a single-family 1 to 4 is going to place an increased consumption demand on a septic system?
That's public health code. I don't do public health code. Yeah, I mean, are there more toilets, more sinks? Yes, but the public health code will regulate whether or not what is adequate for a septic system.
But this regulation change could potentially impact changes to the public health code, correct?
I don't know. It's not going to change the public health code. What it means is the public health code is going to have to review developments in the context of this regulation. So maybe it's not a single family house that's coming through, it's a 4-unit as proposed in this application. So the health inspector, the health agency is going to have to make the determination on the design and capacity of any, treatment system to actually accommodate that, whether it's septic, whether it's a package unit, whether it's a community scale, if DEP ever, flexes with those, that's up to the health agency.
But if you had this kind of broad redesignation of your single-family residential zones in the town to facilitate this over-the-counter, as-of-right zoning permit application process, forgetting in public health code, land of common sense, would you agree with me that would put a significant consumption demand on septic systems and perhaps public water, or, because this is Woodbridge, well?
It may, but I mean, the inverse is true right now. You keep on using the word consumption, which I kind of like. A single family large lot zoning adds additional consumption demand on land. So 100 houses consume 150 acres. If we want to look at consumption, if we allow 4 units per acre as proposed in this conceptual application, then we could get 150 units of housing on what, 25 acres? My math may be wrong there. But the point is, it depends on how you want to look at consumption. Is there increased septic consumption? Yes. But right now, you guys are consuming land like you couldn't imagine. So it just depends on what you want to measure with consumption.
That concludes my questions for you, Mr. Poland. I want to thank you for your cooperation.
I thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Chairman.
So, Attorney Herbst, are you going to continue using the screen share, or?
I'm possibly.
Okay. Just a note, when you do submit those for the record, can you please submit the version that you use that has the yellow highlighting, so it'll be consistent?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, at this time, we're going to get on with our presentation. With me this evening is Brian Miller of the Miller Planning Group. Mr. Miller has been a planner here in the state of Connecticut for a significant period of time. He has regularly consulted municipalities on their zoning regulations, on their affordable housing regulations, and he has submitted a report, and he's going to offer testimony, and I'm going to ask him during the course of the presentation to react to some of the testimony that we heard tonight. But as we begin our presentation tonight on behalf of our clients who are residents, citizens, and taxpayers of the town of Woodbridge, I want to begin by saying this. We are not opposed to affordable housing. We believe that the town needs to come up with a better plan to address this issue. We're going to offer constructive recommendations of how we believe that can be achieved. But I'm reminded of a saying that a gentleman who worked for me in a former life, Public Works Director of Trumbull, used to say to me, when you start wrong, you end wrong. And I believe the application in front of you is starting wrong, and it's going to end wrong for the town of Woodbridge unless a different approach is taken to address this issue in a constructive and an inclusive way. And I think what should really help to guide this conversation, which Mr. Miller will further opine upon, and I'm going to just share the second document if I can find it. One second.
And Mr. Miller, you may want to mute yourself because we might be getting an echo off. Thank you.
One second. See if that worked. Can everybody see this document?
Nope. Yep.
Can't see it?
Yes.
Okay, you can see it. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we really believe that it is this document that should help to guide the commission's. I'm just getting a bad echo. We believe it is this document that should help to guide the commission's deliberations and considerations of an affordable housing plan that makes sense for the town of Woodbridge. I will note that this plan was developed by the Connecticut Department of Housing in December of 2020, and we'd like to enter this into the record as well. The plan goes through a whole host of recommendations for how a community should approach developing an affordable housing plan. But I would note that what this plan discusses is an inclusive approach within the community that brings all key stakeholders together. This plan was put together by many of our elected officials at the state level, people with strong backgrounds in planning, those that have been committed to being champions for affordable housing in our state for quite some time. It says, the plan for affordable housing should be collaborative. It goes, a local affordable housing committee can form organically with a group of concerned citizens coming together to advocate and plan for affordable housing in collaboration with the municipality. And then it goes on to say, in both cases, leadership should work to ensure the committee consists of a diverse group of people representing different demographics and perspectives. It talks about the Fairfield Plan and what was done in Fairfield, where the town set aside town-owned property and dedicated funds for new housing development, as well as amending its zoning regulations to permit accessory dwelling units and to encourage affordable housing through density bonuses and in mixed-use developments. So we will enter this for the record, and we will enter for the record the highlighted version of this document, but it was also part of Mr. Miller's analysis and presentation. And what I would like to do at this time is allow Mr. Miller the opportunity to opine upon his report. And then I'd like to ask him some questions in the context of the testimony that you just heard from Mr. Poland. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Miller.
Great. And Attorney Herbst, you may want to mute yourself. And Mr. Miller, I think you just muted yourself, but now you're on.
No, can you hear me, as they say? Okay. I'd like to share a screen also, and I want to apologize in advance. My skills on this type of technology are not what should be ranked here. It's they're somewhat lacking, and I think maybe Mr. Poland could attest to that. But I would like to share a PowerPoint
So I believe that Chris Sullivan has given you the ability to share. So
There we go.
there's a button down on the bottom of your screen, and you should have your PowerPoint presentation open and ready to share that particular screen.
Which button at the bottom of my screen here? Oh, share. Okay. Okay. Well, my name is Brian Miller. I'm been a planner for over 40 years. Over 30 of those have been here in Connecticut. I've also worked in New Jersey, Colorado, New York, Massachusetts, Arizona, a bit before I settled here in Connecticut. And it has given me a bunch of broad perspective of the different ways things are done in different parts of the country. As an aside, I've done a lot of affordable housing work since the original 830G was enacted. I think it was 1989 and 1990. I've done work with communities for the Mount Laurel, New Jersey regulations, which, as you may know, was sort of one of the early court cases that called discrimination in many of the suburban communities in New Jersey. And in fact, right now, I've also provided planning services to many communities here, including towns of Orange, Hamden, Berlin, and I'm right now working on an 830G application on behalf of the developer. So I like to think I've looked at things from all different sides. Now, Mr. Herbst mentioned this, and I wanted to emphasize this as well. I am not here to at all challenge the need for affordable housing in many communities in Connecticut, including Woodbridge. I'm not here to debate the merits that zoning has. I looked at Dr. Poland's plan beforehand, his presentation, and I agree with it. I think that the history has shown that zoning has been used many times as a process of discrimination against poor and minority populations. There's no question about that. But I also think that we need to approach this issue on the way, in a practical way. Again, Dr. Poland said something like that: planning and infrastructure should be forward-thinking, and I agree. Planning should be forward-thinking, but zoning should be a function of planning. I've always believed, and sometimes my clients have had trouble with this, that you plan for what you want your community to be, and then you insert zoning to further those plans. My experience has been that there's been a lot of many well-intentioned initiatives and proposals that have not been terribly effective on affordable housing. I've been here since 1988. I've heard many proposals. Some have had some limited positive effect, but we're still debating it 30 some odd years later. In this application, I see as the latest in a long series of these initiatives. My analysis here is to determine if this proposal would be an effective and sustainable way for the town of Woodbridge to proceed to encourage affordable housing and yet still take other important planning and community development considerations into effect. The best way, as Mr. Herbst talked about, is to utilize the whole process of planning. So what I've done is I've just analyzed the proposals, the proposed amendments to the Plan of Conservation and Development. And the second would be to talk about the actual zoning. Now, here we have the specific goals of the applicants was stated in their application. So these numbers that I have are are either they're from positive specific sources or they're from theirs. Now the total I haven't reviewed all the sources of their numbers, so I just accepted them. Now it said that that there was a total projected need for new affordable units, a conservative estimate, and that's from the application, of 1,842. That's the need for affordable housing within the town of Woodbridge. 1,842. The 10-year realistic goal would be 542 new units. Now, that compares to the total number of housing units currently in Woodbridge is about 3,100, 3,096, I think, at the end of 2017. There have been only 563 new housing units constructed during the 27-year period in Woodbridge between 1990 and 2017. So here, their 10-year goals restrict realistic actions of 542 affordable units is pretty much the same in the total number of units, housing units, built in the town of Woodbridge over a 27-year period. And between 2008 and 2017, only 28 new housing units were added in the town of Woodbridge. It's an average of about 3 units per year. So you see there seems to be some disconnect between these stated goals, because you need goals to make a determination of what your action is, and the realistic development activity that has occurred in Woodbridge. Now, all right, now that the goals did not sound particularly realistic to me, but are they realistic? All right. Now, I estimated, and I think this is probably, it's not exact, but it's close to 2,800 single-family lots are in Woodbridge. As you know, most of the town has been subdivided. Now, so you say like half of those lots would accommodate 4 units, and I picked 4 units because that was the application that was within the application as they planned to be submitted. That would mean that there would be room for 4,200 additional units, which is enough to cover that 1,842 and the goal of 542. Let me say that again, though. If only half the lots were used for 4 units, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not saying realistic. I'm saying if it's realistic, if their goals are realistic, that means 4,200 additional units in the town of Woodbridge. That's a doubling of the number of units. So you're zoning for way more than you'll ever have any possibility of obtaining. Now, one thing that has been alluded to here is when we do a plan and we come up with an action, the first question that we should ask, a proposed action, is what are the potential impacts of these actions, such as a zoning amendment? So what is the potential impact? And when you're doing a plan of conservation and development, the purpose of the plan is to identify or analyze these potential impacts, to ask these questions. Well, if we want to zone for higher density, what is the impact on the infrastructure and the quality of life within the community? So I wasn't able to assess the impacts of this proposal on this. because the impacts intuitively, I think, would be rather significant. But I would suggest that it would be, it wouldn't be anything I would advise as a planning consultant working with a planning and zoning commission to approve a zoning amendment without evaluating these impacts. And that's been touched upon a little bit before, but these questions were not asked, they were not raised in the application. Water supply, well, yeah, more water is going to be pumped out of the ground. Wastewater disposal, there's only about 10% of the town has access to sanitary sewers, so you're relying on on-site disposal. The whole concept of multiplying the number of the water discharge into the ground of this additional wastewater disposal really should be looked at. It may not have an impact. There may be some engineering solutions that can accommodate this. I don't know. I'm not a sanitary engineer either, or a health official. But the point is that was not part of the application, and that was not analyzed. Now, traffic week, that's the one that's the obvious one to talk about. The street system of Woodbridge is pretty well designed for its use. Perhaps some additional density could be added. I don't know. I'm not a traffic engineer either. But the system certainly is not designed for high volumes of traffic. Now, when that threshold is crossed, I don't know. But you don't know either because it wasn't raised in this issue. Same with an issue like safe walking and biking. It's in your plan of conservation and development. It might not be as important as other issues, but it is part of the quality of life, and it's something that's becoming more important to many communities. Will you be able to walk your dog down the road if there's increase in traffic? And then also there's the issue of transportation costs. There's one of the things that when we talk about affordable housing is really only a function of affordable living. And, I think most of us who live in single-family houses or similar situations, we're used to having 2 or 3 or 4 automobiles. Maybe 4 is a bit pushing it, but certainly 2 is very usual. And I've read statistics that, cost $9,000, $10,000 a year to operate an automobile. If we're talking about what's the best area for low and moderate income housing, it would seem to me it would be in situations where either walking or mass transit might be an option for the residents there as a way that they could lower their overall household costs. In Woodbridge, that's pretty much impossible. There's very little walkable facilities near any of the houses. There is, the buses that go up periodically up and down Litchfield Turnpike, but unless the housing is right up near that road, mass transit isn't even a remote option there. Now, the potential zoning amendment, and Mr. Herbst discussed this with Dr. Poland in their discussion previously, is that, but I want to emphasize it, because when I first looked at the proposal, I had to read it twice and read it all the way through because I thought I was missing something. Now, it would permit multifamily zoning in all residential zones. And it would do it without any input from the Planning and Zoning Commission. You would have the zoning enforcement officer the only thing they would do is get the permit, is to sign off on it. And again, Dr. Poland went into a discussion of the role of site plan, and I don't disagree with him at all. But the key is you have to have good zoning that does what you intended to do. So what this would do is that, well, first let me back up. If I was go back in Colorado and designing a whole new section of the city, this may be able to work, but you're really dealing with inserting a whole new system on an established community. And that's a lot different, as I think you've come to know over the years. And there needs to be a little bit more sensitivity. Now, if the zoning regulations were okay, this opportunity housing zone was okay, and did what you wanted or what they say was intended to do, that's fine. I find this is a rather unique approach to zoning. And getting back to the land of steady habits, well, it certainly has defied the zoning norms here. Maybe not in other parts of the country, but we are where we are, and I think we do things the way that it works best for us. And it's not affecting an empty piece of property; it's affecting a whole community of an existing land use pattern. And that makes that's a real big significant difference. Now, okay, no maximum density requirement. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing in all cases. I know if you're dealing with something in the center part of larger cities, you might just say if you go 10 stories and it can only cover 75% of the lot and have so much parking, and you can get the development you want. But this opportunity housing zone didn't even change anything else in your zoning regulations in the underlying zone. The density right now, it also controls things such as setbacks and maximum coverage, but that's the only thing it does. The only regulation that limits density now is either the wastewater disposal capacity, which now is somewhat finite, but just like a lot of other things, the whole technology is advancing, and we don't know how much, with low flow fixtures and better engineered wastewater disposal, you can't count on that as a density determinant. Setbacks, 25 feet side and rear, maximum coverage, all right? So the maximum coverage is 15%, which doesn't sound like a lot. But again, these are the only black and white measures, the definitive measures that are being left to now develop higher densities on your property. Now, the maximum coverage, your minimum lot size is 65,000 feet, right, square feet. So that would mean you could do 9,750 feet of coverage on your lot right now, and you could fit it within the setbacks. Now imagine that's a 10,000 square foot single family house. It could go up to 2 floors too. That's all in compliance with those regulations. So you could have 20,000 square feet of housing, theoretically, in accordance with the regulations, on that minimum size lot of 65,000 square feet. So 20,000, if you do it, let's do some easy math, right? 1,000 foot per unit, which is, it's a little small for a 2-family. That's 20 units on that one lot. Now, I know I'm getting carried away a little bit, giving you a worst case scenario. So let me give you a more realistic scenario. And this is my hypothetical lot. Again, I'm not a drafter, I'm not an engineer, but what I have here is a lot, a very even shaped lot, 350 feet by 200 feet, 65,000 square feet, the minimum size, again, no wetlands, nothing flat as, anything. So what I show here is that 8 residential 2-story buildings, each with 1,200 square feet. And there could be, that's 8 units there. And there's enough parking for 20 cars. It's all within the setbacks, and there's a lot of room left there, as you can see. This here is your setback boundary. So you have plenty of room to do stuff to actually have expanded it. And you also have options. You could underground put the parking on the first floor. But again, this is not even overdoing it. So that 8 units, 2-story units of a good size, that is feasible on this. So you're not talking about the 4 units necessarily that the applicant is proposing. It could go way beyond that. And we know, particularly if people do as much as they're allowed to do, and developers do that, and I don't fault them for doing that, but that's where you have to have the give and take of better thought out regulations. So without changing the setback regulations, you really are opening up this possibility. Now, that's also, again, there's no review here. Right now, the way we've done things, again, in our land of steady habits, is basically the usual permit issued by a zoning enforcement officer without consulting the Planning and Zoning Commission. Single-family houses, buildings which have already received commission approval, minor additions, that type, swimming pool sheds and garages. But now we're jumping up from these to multifamily buildings. What are the things? Again, there's no design requirements here. There's no landscape requirements. There's absolutely nothing to prevent somebody from putting some sort of box there. The location of the parking is not regulated at all. You could have parking going into a neighbor's, abutting a neighbor's yard, headlights. There's no requirements for walkways. The only design requirements, interestingly enough, and I'm not sure why these were selected, is no flat roofs, which is a good one. But we're in New England, we don't see that many flat roofs anyway. And there must be a breakup alongside. And that's a quote. I don't know exactly how to interpret that. All right, so here you have the summary here of what we've come up with is that basically one thing I didn't write on here, because I think it was a little too obvious to me. You're doing zoning, you're not really doing planning. The planning amendments are just to ensure some, they're backwards. You don't do planning as a result of zoning, you do zoning as a result of planning. And this approach that's being proposed to you is the opposite of what it should be. We talk about smart growth. Well, I don't think sprinkling little islands of multifamily throughout a low density area with minimum infrastructure is smart growth. It's supposed to be concentration of services and activity within certain areas where they're best able to be supported. This is not smart growth by any means. And I know smart growth is used, if you listen to some neighbors, nothing is smart growth if it's in their backyard. But this is truly not smart growth. The whole issue of affordable housing, to think that it could be dealt with on a municipal level of 169 communities within the state is just ludicrous. Because if you need if you have a housing need in Orange, you could actually have it resolved in Woodbridge or West Haven or New Haven. It needs to be there needs to be a regional approach. Housing markets do not stop on lines on the map. So to say Woodbridge needs this is kind of disingenuous, I think. I think it's more logical saying the South Central Connecticut region it has an anticipated need of X number, and you don't just appropriate it by some arbitrary, well, Woodbridge has 2.4% of the population. It needs to be distributed on some sort of rational basis. Where is it best to be? And it might be better in some communities than others. So this kind of picking out one town because it's a fairly well-to-do town with expensive housing and kind of zeroing on that is really, it's not planning. I understand it's an advocacy situation. The third thing is, and I'm working with Mr. Herbst, and I value the legal profession very much. But here's another example of a legal solution to a land use planning issue. We've seen it before. We've seen 830G was one of those. I thought my impression when it was approved was that there'd be some element of planning in it. Frankly, there's very little. It's basically a legal solution. I'm biased. I'm a planner. I think land use situations should have land use planning basis, and that this is not based on any sort of public decision making in an effective approach. There's no guarantee. The impact of all this is up to question. I can't even tell you what's going to happen. I don't think that the applicant has at least it hasn't been presented in the applicant's proposal. Now, one of the things when I was discussing this with Mr. Herbst, I thought that, I don't like coming in and saying, well, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. There are ways we could be doing this. As I mentioned before, a regional solution, I think, would be much more effective. I understand the difficulties. It's not easy getting all the communities to get together on an important issue, but if we're really serious about solving it, that's what we need to do. We need also a community-based strategy. It's not something that some, attorney comes in, throws at you and saying, here it is, take it or leave it. It has to be. And I know that has not worked well in Woodbridge. I'm aware of some of the history, but just because it hasn't worked now doesn't mean it's not the best solution. Mr. Herbst showed you this planning for affordability document. It was actually kind of serendipitous that this came up. I had agreed to start working with him on it, and about a week later, I got an email with this document in it. And frankly, I was very pleasantly surprised. After all these years, I tend to get a little jaded about reports coming out of state agencies. But this one I thought was an excellent how-to-do manual of how to create an affordable housing plan that has some community basis. And, there's the process here is, this is directly from the report. And this is basic planning, and it's been adopted. Community engagement, housing needs assessment, evaluate local land use and zoning, which I think was totally not done here. Understand the role of local and regional housing market conditions in financing affordable housing. None of that has been done here. And creating a community value statement. Again, that's all in this report. My strongest recommendation to you would be read that report and move on with it and create an affordable housing plan through that process. That's the best one. Now, I also talk about some specifics. Two-family houses, you might loosen up the regulations on that. And that might be appropriate to have two-family houses just with a zoning permit and then not going through you. Again, but the regulations have to be crafted to do what you need to do. Townhouse development in certain parts of town, and none of these are the silver bullet. Most good solutions come with a use of different methods, and some of them may work better than others. The mixed use, I know that the opportunities for that are rather limited, but there are some down in the Amity area. And one of the conventional ones we've been doing is, I know that there's going to be some sighing when I mention this, the undeveloped property analysis. First of all, I guess let me start with that one. When you look at the undeveloped property and you see which of it is suitable, whether it's owned by the town or somebody else. And if it's suitable, if it's like right on the Field Turnpike, and it's it doesn't have environmental constraints, and maybe you could do a small affordable housing development there with perhaps a public-private partnership or some grant money. And finally, you do have an underutilized piece of property in the town that sort of jumps out and says, maybe that's a good idea. And I know it's been a historic sore point here, but that doesn't make it that I still think that need would be the easiest thing to do as part of your strategy. You don't have to use the whole country club. You could do a plan for the whole property that has recreation and whatever the other community needs are, and include a couple of acres of it as a nice affordable housing development. And unlike zoning, if the town is the property owner, they can dictate a lot more of the fine points of what they want within reason that makes sure it's still financially viable. So those are all things that you can do that I think are much more effective than you have right now. And finally, just to conclude a little bit, and I apologize for speaking more, but I think it's an important issue that, I think many of us have thought about for many years. This would create a chaotic zoning situation. Basically, it would remove, for all intents and purposes, zoning as any sort of control of land use over 90-some-odd% of your community. Significant impacts are likely. They have, but we don't have any idea what they are. It does not ensure the production of much affordable housing. There still needs to be somebody coming and building it. And again, having gone through this many times, let's face it, what the short-term outcome will be years of litigation if you improve it. And it would divert resources and energy from real solutions. So we used to make a joke about 830G. The planners made this joke that it was called the Affordable Housing Appeals because it certainly produced a lot of affordable housing appeals. And I think this would also be this would be undergoing litigation for years. But most importantly, you have better approaches. And I would encourage the commission, because I think, the eyes are upon the town of Woodbridge now, that you not approve this and you take a more affirmative role in the production of affordable housing. And I thank you very much for your tolerance in listening to me and explaining, and I'm happy to answer any questions by anybody at any appropriate time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Herbst, I think you're on mute. Mr. Miller, you should probably mute and stop sharing.
Am I on?
Mr. Herbst, Attorney Herbst, you are now on. And your plan was to continue and ask a few more questions, and then I'm doing a quick time check. We're at 9:25. I think that's okay.
I think Mr. Miller addressed a lot of what I was going to ask him in his comments, so I won't be redundant, Chairman, because I think it's on the record, it's established, and we've made the point. I'm going to just wrap up our presentation and follow what Mr. Miller said. I can't emphasize enough how important this application is and what you do as a commission for not only the town of Woodbridge, but the state of Connecticut. This application in its current form, as I said from the onset of my comments, when you start wrong, you end wrong. And this application does not start a meaningful, constructive dialogue to help guide Woodbridge to come up with a solution that makes sense for Woodbridge in addressing the need for affordable housing. As I said from the onset of my comments, we do not disagree with the fact that the town needs to come up with a workable solution. We support much of, not all of, but much of what is contained in the recommendations from the Connecticut Department of Housing regarding how this process should conduct itself in municipalities across our state. And, you know, I keep coming back to some of the key recommendations in that report, which should guide this commission as it determines whether or not to approve this application or to chart its own course. And it says, it's very clear that the affordable housing plan in communities should be effective as a guiding policy document that supports the development of affordable homes in your town. Your plan needs the support of the local community. The best way to build support for your town's plan is to create an inclusive planning process that provides meaningful opportunities for resident participation in the process from the beginning. This did not happen here, and this did not happen with this application. I have said on repeated occasion that I believe updates to a plan of conservation and development should be driven by the municipality. They should not be applicant-driven, because it's the municipality that brings all of the key stakeholders together to come up with a plan that makes sense, that is workable. The commission is the what. The commission formulates the public policy based upon that public feedback and the inclusivity of the process. And it's your consultants and your staff that develops the how in drafting regulations that help you get there. The what didn't happen and the how didn't happen the way it should. It should not be applicant-driven. It should be commission-driven. It should be municipality-driven. And the report goes on to state, by providing meaningful opportunities for residents to help shape the plan, you engage residents in a productive dialogue on the policies and strategies that your town will ultimately work to advance to create more affordable housing. I think it's a pretty safe bet that if you were to engage your community in this process, people would, on a very broad basis, agree that it is not appropriate to not have your local planning and zoning commission, which is made up of the citizens and electors of the town of Woodbridge, involved in the approval process for any application that comes forward, whether that be through site plan approval or special permit approval. To completely remove the Planning and Zoning Commission from the process entirely, quite frankly, is irresponsible, and I think it disrespects the role and function that our volunteers at the local level play in formulating public policy through the POCD and through your regulations, of which your residents depend upon you to make these decisions for the benefit of your community, both now and in the future. And I have to point to page 19 of the plan that was promulgated by the Connecticut Department of Housing in December of 2020, when it talked about the land use and zoning assessment framework that should be utilized in determining a workable affordable housing plan. Identification of underutilized lots, including but not limited to parking lots in close proximity to transit, strip malls or office parks with high vacancy rates, vacant lots and or vacant industrial sites, underutilized municipally owned property. These are the types of considerations that should be guiding any reforms that the Commission is going to implement to the POCD or to the regulations. And based upon the testimony that was elicited tonight, it is more than abundantly clear that that inclusive, collaborative process that was driven by listening to your community, your residents, that did not happen. And I should point out, as we heard from a lot of the public statements, there are many people in the town of Woodbridge who overwhelmingly agree that something needs to be done. So it's not as if change can't happen, but change needs to come from within the community and include the community in the conversation. And that did not happen here. I believe that this application in its present form goes against the fundamental tenets of Connecticut General Statutes 8-2 and 8-23, specifically as it relates to the role, obligation, and responsibilities of a planning and zoning commission to properly plan and zone your municipality. It does not include the community in the way that it should. It disregards the commission entirely, and I think it is going to cause many unintended consequences for the town of Woodbridge in the future that are going to have a tremendous adverse impact on your infrastructure, your water supply, your septic capacity, all things that should be considered by planners in assessing any future reforms to your POCD or to your regulations. I'm going to ask that this commission deny the applications as presented, and concomitantly, I'm going to ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission work with the Board of Selectmen to begin the legislative process to reopen your plan of conservation and development. I am asking the commission to drive this ship. I'm asking the commission to hire the necessary consultants and planning experts to come up with a workable, affordable housing plan for your community, one in which you review, you vet, and that you collaborate with the citizens and taxpayers of the town of Woodbridge that you will ultimately adopt. I think we could acknowledge that the past is the past and we're looking forward. We need to make changes, but there's a right way to do things. This is not the right way, and I would respectfully request, again, that these applications be denied and that the commission initiate a revision to its plan of conservation and development and its zoning code, addressing some of the concerns raised here tonight. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will yield the floor.
Thank you, Attorney Herbst. A bit of housekeeping. If Mr. Miller can make sure that he files his PowerPoint presentation with Chris Sullivan, so we have that in the record as well. I will note that the planning report from the state housing department was also attached, I believe, in your original filing, so I'm not sure if you need to duplicate that filing, though. The version you did have had highlighting, so for belts and suspenders, if you want the highlighted version on the record as well, that's fine. Another housekeeping item before I turn it over to the applicants who may have questions for you or your expert. For our commission members, if I could have a motion to allow the applicants to cross-examine Attorney Herbst and his expert, Mr. Miller.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So I'll turn it over to the applicants if you have questions of Attorney Herbst and or Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman Clay. I'll be handling the cross-examination for tonight. I'd like to simply cross-examine Mr. Miller.
Yes, that's appropriate. Go right ahead. Mr. Miller,
Okay.
you're here. Okay.
So good evening, Mr. Miller. It's
Good
nice to
evening.
meet you, and thank you for being with us tonight during these public hearings. We're really grateful to have your voice added to this community dialogue that we've been having for the past few months, and which we expect are going to continue over the coming months as well. So we reviewed the report that you prepared and that Attorney Herbst submitted into the record dating January 3rd, 2021. We'd like to take this opportunity to just ask you a few clarifying questions about the content of that report.
Sure.
So before I begin on that, I just want to thank you for acknowledging in your report that the town has a severe shortage of affordable housing. So in addition to your own analysis, you also submitted a December 2020 report from the Connecticut Department of Housing and the Regional Plan Association. This is the report that we've been talking about tonight so far. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And this report states that, quote, access to high opportunity census tracts is very often limited by a lack of housing affordability, and areas of opportunity are predominantly occupied by white people. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
So do you agree that Woodbridge is a high opportunity area?
I would assume so.
And do you agree that there is very little affordable housing in Woodbridge?
Sure, sure.
And do you also agree that Woodbridge is occupied predominantly by white people?
I guess so. I really didn't look into that, but my observations would support that. But that's not my professional analysis, put it that way.
So that same report also states that exclusion from high opportunity areas, quote, not an accident. In many instances, this continues to be perpetuated by local land use and zoning regulations. Suburban localities were given the ability to maintain racial and economic segregation through the use of exclusionary zoning barriers, most notably by imposing single-family districts. Do you agree that Woodbridge imposes these single-family districts across the vast majority of town?
Of course.
All right. So moving on to your own report, on page 9, you argue that our amendment would leave opportunity housing developments, quote, unregulated.
Yes.
So under our amendment, wouldn't these developments be regulated by minimum setback requirements of the underlying zone?
Well, to a certain extent, but as I pointed out, they would allow many more units than you're proposing on that piece of property that you or your clients have purchased. It would be unregulated in the way that we know how it's regulated, where there could be an easy 8 units on larger lots. You could be talking about 10, 15, 20 units. So in that sense, yes, it is unregulated. And the important point that zoning does regulation.
But there are limits on how large a building can get. This is regulated in that sense, correct?
It's very loosely regulated, and the current regulations are not designed to accommodate multifamily housing. They were designed, the problem is you came in and changed a little bit of the zoning, and you left the rest of it the same without any sort of accommodation that the uses that you are now permitting are very different from the uses being permitted.
Okay, so would maximum building coverage requirements also apply to opportunity housing?
Yes, yes.
And would parking requirements apply to opportunity housing?
Yes, yes.
And would the requirements for the capacity of the on-site disposal system also apply to opportunity housing?
Yes, but it's not feasible to use that as the major determinant of the density. And right now there's new types of on-site wastewater disposal being developed, just like there's better ways of doing all sorts of things. And it's very possible that a more efficient on-site disposable system will be available within the next several years that could accommodate 5 or 8 or 10 units on a small 1.5 or 2 acre site. So right, it's a factor that the town has no control over. So it really is not an effective limitation on density.
So just to clarify, you expect in the coming years or even now, multifamily housing with a septic system could very well fall into compliance with the state public health code without any issue?
I would expect. I'm not a sanitary engineer, but I have been aware of improvements throughout the years of on-site and sometimes the regulations are behind the technology as well. I certainly would not think it's entirely unlikely that some improvements will result over time. I don't know exactly what they will be, but given the pace of technology, yeah, I would guess that would be true.
Well, thank you. So your report does acknowledge on page 7 how all of these regulations would in fact apply to opportunity housing. But on page 8, your report has a site plan for an 8-unit multifamily development that you did show us earlier. And this then implies that it would somehow be less regulated than currently allowed single-family homes. But to clarify, isn't the exact structure that you illustrated already allowed in Residence A under current zoning so long as only a single family occupies it? Couldn't that be built now?
Yeah, but it won't be built. I mean, we could get to what could be built. I never would see, I think you could look for single family houses up and down over the entire state or the Northeast or whatever, and you're not going to find a single family house on an acre and a half that has 20 parking spaces and is in that configuration. And it's also not just the physical configuration, it's what's the intensity of use. And I think it's pretty obvious, or the facts show that you will have more people and more activity in a 8-unit development than you would in even a large single family house. So, you know, it's apples and oranges. The use the form is related to the use. And an 8-unit development is very different. Now, it can be designed in certain ways that make it more conforming, but the regulations that you propose do not include any such requirements.
Okay, so I just want to clarify further. On page 8, you write, most similar communities in Connecticut, quoting, most similar communities in Connecticut use staff approval of the project for limited and simple projects. Isn't it correct to say that today in Woodbridge, a 20,000 square foot single family home with a 2,000 square foot driveway, an Olympic sized pool, a 2,000 square foot pool house, and a 5-car garage can be built with only staff approval?
Yeah, I assume so.
All right. So your report suggests several alternative zoning changes, including allowing the construction of 2-family homes beyond the teeny 0.2% of the town's land area where they're currently permitted, allowing townhouses in single-family neighborhoods, and also allowing an affordable housing residential development on the Country Club of Woodbridge property.
Right.
To your knowledge, does Woodbridge's current plan of conservation and development, which runs through 2025, endorse any of these proposals at all?
I'm not sure. I did go through it, but I don't remember the specifics of it. So I guess it wouldn't be appropriate for me to answer it. I don't think it was specific on it, but again, I can't really answer that.
All right. So are you aware of any pending applications to amend the zoning regulations per your recommendations?
No, but I'm not really following Woodbridge's their regulations. I've gone through it. I understand there's been some attempts in the past, which is not unusual, but I haven't analyzed them or anything. And I suspect that they were mostly outwardly driven by a developer or somebody, you know, such as yourself. I don't think they came up through the planning process. So, you know, it does happen in other communities. So, is that, again, I'm not speaking about that, you know, what the history has been in Woodbridge. I'm sure you will make that argument or that, and I know Dr. Poland's discussion covered that well. I'm not disputing any of that. What I'm suggesting is there's better ways to move ahead now than what is proposed here.
So have your clients engaged you to conduct a study of any of those alternative strategies? or a draft of POCD and zoning text amendments, or to file applications with the commission, or to work on any of these things' adoption?
I'm going to object to that question because that would involve conversations that they have had with me as well, and that is protected by the attorney-client privilege.
I'm not sure objections are really something that is standard procedure in this type of hearing, but Mr. Miller, if you believe this is attorney-client privilege, you can.
I'm not an attorney, so I have to be guided by
if you believe
attorney people.
All right. So just to clarify, that you're aware of, there's no current movement to produce any of these amendments to zoning regulations or to produce any changes to the POCD right now?
I objected to that question already. You just asked it in another way. I'm going to object the objection again.
This is not particular to any of your plans, but just in general in the community of Woodbridge.
I'm not aware of it, but then again, it's not my focus. That wasn't my assignment. I try to be aware of things happening in the communities around me, but I work in all over the state. So, if there's something that's happening a little bit behind the scenes in Woodbridge or East Hampton or Enfield, I'm not necessarily aware of that. So I'm not aware of it, but I don't think that really has any bearing on anything.
All right. Thank you for your time, Mr. Miller. I have no further questions, but I would like to reserve the right, if possible, to cross-examine Mr. Miller on his presentation tonight at a future meeting. We weren't provided a copy of his PowerPoint presentation until tonight, so we just like the opportunity to look it through a little bit more, prepare our questioning for a future date. We'd also like to just request a copy of the presentation document, as has already been mentioned.
Chairman Klee, I would also add to that I'd like to reserve my right to cross-examine others that might have testified, not including who I cross-examined this evening.
Well, it looks like everyone wants to have the right to talk to everyone again, which we will continue to do as we are meeting further into.
Can I interject with just a clarification on what Attorney Terp just said? So is his intention to reserve the right to cross-examine people who have not yet presented, or to cross-examine people who presented back in November and he just wants to hold on to that opportunity in his back pocket for fun?
To clarify, I'm asking for both because we were given approximately 2 hours to present and to cross-examine, and that is less than the amount of time that you have had to present and to cross-examine. So in the interest of fairness, I think it's only appropriate that we reserve that option.
And also,
Mr. Chairman, hold on a minute. Mr. Chairman, I would just think it's appropriate right now for attorneys to use the chairman to address your comments. Please do not start sparring with each other. It's distracting to the public and it's distracting to the commission members. So through the chair, you may state what your position is, but I think Chairman Klee has already summarized that everybody wants to reserve their rights, and the public hearing will be open for quite a while so that everybody gets an opportunity. So I think at this point, we should just move on.
Can I, through the chairman, say one additional thing? So I'd simply say that I understand that there's a desire to keep the hearing open for quite some time, I think is what Attorney Dubuque has said. This process will have to come to a close and a decision will have to be rendered at some point. And I simply request that we make some kind of sensible, logical determination about when this ends. So we've asked for the right to cross-examine Mr. Miller further only because we didn't have the benefit of his presentation that came tonight until tonight. Attorney Herbst has cross-examined people who presented 2.5 months ago, I believe. So those seem like qualitatively different things to me. I'm not dictating an answer. I'm just suggesting that at some point it would be helpful to have a rule about when it is we have to sort of dispatch our ability to further cross-examine people who testified 2.5 months ago.
Thank you, Attorney Lamar. And do you have anything else that you'd like to add, Attorney Herbst?
Through the chair, I would just reiterate that in the interest of fairness, I would also remind my colleague that they have indicated that they plan on filing a reply brief to Mr. Miller's report, in addition to wanting to cross-examine him further. And I will again reiterate that the amount of time that we have had to cross-examine and present has been far less than what the applicant has had to present and to cross-examine. So I would just simply ask that I have confidence in your counsel and in you, Mr. Chairman, and the commission to determine what is fair. I just raised those issues, and I will ultimately leave that to the commission, because it's the commission that's driving this ship, not the opponents or the applicant.
Great, thank you both. And the spirit of this is to get as much information as we can, as expeditiously as we can, recognizing the challenges that we have of COVID and other sorts of things. So I do appreciate both the applicants' presentations, the opposition's presentations. We will have more presentations, which is something that we have to do in terms of scheduling next from a consultant hired by the town. So it's my goal to make sure that everyone in the proceeding feels that they've had the opportunity to present their material. I have no interest in repeating material over and over again. That shouldn't be an issue. But the other goal, this is a public hearing. We also are going to schedule plenty of time for the members of the public who are listening in, watching, to make sure that their voices are heard as well. So rest assured, that's the overall goal. I think that in the end, there will be, the goal will be balanced. It will be balanced in terms of people's opportunity. And because as commission members, we are learning every time we hear from a new presenter, and we really appreciate that, the time and effort all are putting into it. So to the extent that you file additional things written, that's also fine. We all will have a large docket to read, and that is really also a way that all this gets on the public record. It gets into Chris Sullivan's hands. It gets put up on the website. So again, that will be an important element as well. So I think that's, so for tonight, yes, there will, maybe Attorney Dubuque, we should move to our scheduling conversation, because maybe that will give a sense of where we're headed over the next few weeks. So if our commission members can pull out their calendars, and everyone else as well. Attorney Dubuque, we were looking perhaps at scheduling a meeting for the town's consultant to make a presentation in the third week of February, the week of February 22nd, which again, Attorney Dubuque, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be a presentation. I assume both our party and would then have opportunity after that presentation to ask questions of a consultant, and then ultimately we'll get to the point where the commission members are going to be asking questions of all of you. So that's in the rough outline, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think after the consultant presents, that should be the opportunity for the commission members to start asking questions, because you've deferred your questions in fairness to get some information into the record. And then after that, I think it would be appropriate for Attorney Herbst and Attorney Lamar and Attorney Boggs and their team to have an opportunity also to ask some questions. But I think there have been enough opportunities provided thus far. The public has had numerous opportunities and can also send their comments into the commission through Chris Sullivan. So I think it's time, once you hear from the town's consultant, that the commission members start to ask questions and have some comments so that all parties can be guided in terms of what issues the commission is most concerned about. So I think that would be the most productive way to proceed.
So, commission members, I'm asking you, I think that is, sounds like a reasonable plan on proceeding. Jeff, did you have a question?
I'm just trying to understand what Marianne just said. I think it's important that commission members start to ask some questions. This is not a court of law. This is a commission. We have how many attorneys on right now, everybody arguing these points. I think it could be helpful to have some points to bring up that are just regular people questions that could help sort of move the dialogue forward and would point out key issues we'd all like to address. But I defer to you, Mr. Chairman, and the approach you want to take, but I think it's time to let some commissioners ask questions.
Jeff, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yoni, I see your hand. And then I'll go to...
Paul was ahead of me.
Well, I can't tell which Paul is there.
It's true.
I'm split. Go ahead, Yoni.
I don't disagree with Mr. Kennedy, but I think this process needs to play itself out. My only request was that if the chairman could please reiterate to the assembled participants, and I'm not speaking to the folks who just presented here, I'm speaking to the advocates on both sides of the issue, if they could be please reminded not to communicate with us directly, not to send any more flyers containing our names and email addresses, because that is wholly inappropriate. I think there needs to be a posted reminder on the website of the Planning and Zoning Commission that I should not receive any more personal emails sent to me, and my email address should not be shared with the whole town simply because somebody doesn't have enough to do and doesn't understand how the process works. That's what I wanted to say about this. I don't have a problem with continuing this hearing for as many times as necessary to let everybody be heard. But I don't want to hear from anybody personally because that's inappropriate. And I just hope that our various celebrated and esteemed members of the audience understand that. And I think they know who I'm speaking to.
Thank you, Yoni. Paul.
Mine's a quick question. So at our next meeting, we are going to have the town's consultant speak. Will the public be allowed to comment or ask questions, or how will the public be able to be involved in what the town's consultant says or presents?
Good question, Marion.
So after the consultant, with the way we've kind of outlined things, the consultant, then I think it's appropriate to have the commission members ask questions. Then you can go back to public comment, and once again, while the public hearing process is open, written comments can be received. So if there are comments that need to be made that have not already been shared with the commission members, there will be an opportunity for the public to participate at another hearing, probably not the next one, but we still have some time under the COVID-19 extensions that Governor Lamont allowed for zoning decisions. So right now we are proceeding under the statutory time frame as extended by the COVID-19 executive order.
So, Rob, would it be okay or appropriate if at some point there was some quick little Word document posted or PDF just to let everyone know what the timeline is and who's expected to speak at what meeting? So, I mean, I would hate to have people, especially in the public, come to a meeting expecting to offer comments and then find out they sat around for 3 hours, enjoyed all of our company, but weren't able to make any comments. I just want to be as fully transparent and communicative as possible on this.
So I think, Paul, that's always a good point. And I think that would be possible if we sort of map out our next couple of meetings. So if that's a meeting on the 22nd, or the week of the 22nd, and then we have our regular meeting, which is March 1st, although Chris We always run into kind of regular business sorts of questions on those meetings. And then perhaps we schedule one more after that in March, with the goal of perhaps that one being the final sort of large public comment session. But this is why we're sort of, asking our commission members to sort of think about that. And I know we don't have everyone here tonight, but so I think for the next meeting in the first week of, or in the third week of February will be, Marion, the town's consultant. How long do you think that presentation will be?
I mean, I guess maybe a half hour. I don't think it'll be much more than that. And then I think the commission members should be prepared to bring their questions from all of the presenters to date. And then, of course, anything that comes up at that point from the planning consultants.
Okay.
But I'm gonna suggest that you just pick one meeting now, and then in the meantime, before the next meeting, perhaps Chris can post what the commission intends to do for special meetings, because I know you don't have everybody here. So if you just go with one meeting now for the third week of February, and then you'll probably have some time at your March 1 meeting, and then we can figure out between now and the special meeting in February, what the schedule will be in fairness to the commission members that aren't here tonight. This way you can make sure you get, a critical mass of commission members.
Okay. I think that's fine, though I do like Paul's sort of suggestion that, and for Chris as well, that we sort of clarify as I think we did for this one, that we knew that this topic was only coming up at 8 o'clock and onwards, et cetera, so that the folks know that. We also may try to sneak in a quick public hearing just to keep regular business going on that week of the 22nd for perhaps the first half hour, sort of get that clarified out of the way, and then we do a similar maybe approach. So let's look at our calendars in the week of the 22nd. First of all, Chris, are there any town meetings that we need to watch out for that we would be tripping over their WebEx or their other schedules? If we were looking, say, at Monday the 22nd as an opportunity.
Well, if you're having a presentation and you're asking questions, it's not particularly a meeting for the public to comment. They can still watch it because we've been posting them on the link that Pua provides online. So unless Pua can't cover your meeting, which I think she can because she's so good at this now, I wouldn't think that that would be something that you need to not hold a meeting on that date.
Okay. And so that would be recordable and postable.
And that's what we've been doing. We've been taking the link that Pua provides and posting it on the commission page of the town website. Yes.
Okay, how does that look for commission members, the Monday the 22nd at 6:30 start time, though the 6:30 to 7 might be our application for that special exception, and then a 7 o'clock start time for, no earlier than 7 o'clock start time for our town consultant's presentation, and then commission member questions.
Sounds good.
Applicant and interviewer.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, fine. I think Attorney Boggs got bumped from the participant roster, so I've just, oh, yep, it works for her. Thank you.
Okay. So we've accomplished something.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask that you formally vote to continue the public hearing, just to keep everything proper?
Always. So a motion to continue the hearing until February 22nd at a meeting that will begin at 6:30, though this portion of the hearing will start at 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So we've now got our next meeting where there'll be a presentation by the town's consultants and questions from our commission members of everyone and anyone, which is appreciated. And at that meeting, or we will continue to, Marianne, we will continue to sort of figure out the next elements of our schedule. We will try to figure out what we have on for the March 1st regular meeting, if we can use some of that time. And then possibly find one more time in March, just so people know in general the roadmap we're heading on. Okay. Any additional items? Other than, I will reiterate what Yoni said, the importance of making sure that all of our material that comes to the commission on this topic comes through the appropriate channels, not through individual emails, not through alternative channels. We do take that seriously. It is not appropriate. It is, I don't know exactly actually what Yoni is talking about, because I don't think I got.
My wife would say the same thing, yeah.
Because I don't know. I have not seen other emails, but if they are happening, stop. And please make sure that folks submit everything to Chris Sullivan, because otherwise we can't actually consider it unless it's gone through the appropriate channels. Anything else from commission members before we adjourn? Seeing none, motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.